to thank all three, Nikos, Frank, and Tini, for their interventions. Well, first of all, regarding unresolved conflicts, and this is the case of Famagusta. I think what is a general premise is that you shouldn't put gas on a fire. And this is, by saying that, I would say that a general principle of the Council of Europe and all the countries participating in the international spectrum is not to reflame any conflict that it has been unresolved so far. So any move to the direction of altering what it has been still unresolved in the Cyprus issue, it wouldn't help any peaceful resolution of that conflict. Furthermore, I would like to tackle the issue of migration and the pressure and the utilization, as I said, of refugees as a pressure or tool for political endeavors. And this is definitely against our values. And whoever is using refugees as a tool to pursue its political goals or to put extra pressure on the member states, this should be immediately stopped, and any country should refrain from that. Let me say that since February, Greece has changed its policy towards the refugees according to the principles of our legal framework, and we have, let's say, imposed high surveillance on our border. That doesn't mean that we are executing pushbacks. We are executing a policy which is in line with European legal framework. And it says that under the observation and with the participation of Frontex and NATO, and we are executing a policy that will limit the flows, especially after what has happened in the Evros region, and due to the pandemic and the closure of borders that the pandemic forced us to do with third countries. Therefore, I would say that pushbacks are not the case, but definitely a high guarded policy of the Greek sea borders and land borders is in place. Let me say about the European solidarity on the issue of Morya. So far, we have some European partners have presented their wish and will to host some of the unaccompanied minors coming from Morya. It would be much better if we could have also refugees being relocated from Morya. What has happened in Morya is definitely a great humanitarian disaster. From last Wednesday, that this incident of total burnout of the camp, we have put in place a shelter for more than 7,000 people so far. Unfortunately, many of the people from Morya have not moved in the new sheltered camp, and they are very reluctant in doing so because they believe that by being and living in conditions that are certainly inhuman will create more pressure in order for them to be relocated either in other European countries or in mainland Greece. We still believe that we have to examine thoroughly, according to our legal system and the European practice, all their petitions for asylum, and based on the results of these petitions, to grant them the right to relocate or not. Let me say a few things about the case of Kavala and the other cases in which Turkey has been condemned. Let me be clear with the case of Kavala. The judgment by the European Court of the 10th of December of 2019 became final on May 11 this year. The court found a number of violations of the convention and concluded that the detention of Mr. Cabela has been imposed to silence him as an NGO activist and human rights defender and to dissuade other persons from engaging in such activities. The Committee of Ministers examined this case at their latest human rights meeting, finding that the reimposition of new criminal charges on him raised a strong presumption that his current detention is a continuation of the violation found by the court. As such, it called for his immediate release and urged the authorities to ensure that Mr. Kavala's application for review of his current detention is examined by the Constitutional Court within the shortest possible time frame. The committee will examine his situation again at its next human rights meeting at the end of September. We hope that such matters will be effectively resolved, protecting human rights, the rule of law, democracy, which were put in question also by the arrest of several mayors, members of the Turkish opposition. There are several other cases in which the Committee of Ministers is supervising, and it will not spare the fact when these decisions become final to take a stand, a clear stand, in calling Turkey for the immediate release of the detainees.
Thank you, Miltiadis. We now go for the next row of three interventions. Maybe one small remark, if you allow me, concerning the remark you made on the monasteries. We did have some exchange of letters on the issue, and as I understand it, the chair of the Cultural Committee is going to address this issue in its meeting at the end of September. Voilà, just as an information to you. We now have three people intervening, Pierre-Alain Frides, Alexander Pojcek, and Dame Cheryl Giddens. We will start with Pierre-Alain Frides. Pierre-Alain, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre et ancien collègue de l'Assemblée. Je m'exprime là en tant que président de la Commission des migrations et je porte à votre connaissance que hier, le Bureau a accepté l'idée d'envoyer une délégation ad hoc de notre Commission des migrations à Lesbos, bien entendu à deux conditions. La première, c'est que les conditions sanitaires soient respectées, correctes et le permettent. Le deuxième, c'est effectivement qu'on ait l'accord des autorités grecques. Notre démarche, en fait, elle est relativement simple. Nous prenons acte du fait que les pays de première ligne, dont la Grèce, sont soumis à un effort énorme par rapport à la problématique des migrants. Et vraiment, on vous en félicite. Mais cet effort est effectivement lié aussi à des situations qui sont des fois très compliquées. Et ce qui vient de se passer à Morya nous interpelle et nous force quelque part à nous impliquer au maximum pour tenter d'aider ces gens, de vous aider à trouver des solutions. Et l'idée, ce serait... La volonté vraiment de la Commission, c'est de faire un constat et de se battre pour que, en fait, les relocalisations s'intensifient, car on ne peut pas demander à la Grèce, à Malte, à l'Italie de faire tout l'effort. Il est vraiment très important que les autres pays s'engagent également. D'où l'idée de cette démarche qui est vraiment une volonté constructive de faire en sorte que la situation de ces gens s'améliore. Et en fait, l'idée, ma question, c'est quelle est votre appréciation en tant que ministre de cette démarche, de notre volonté? Merci pour votre réponse.
Merci Pierre-Alain. Puis-je encore une fois rappeler les collègues que la question c'est 1 minute. Je sais que le sujet est très important. Alors je vous propose que quand je vois que vous allez au-delà de la minute, je vais faire comme ça avec les mains au-dessus de la tête. Comme ça vous le voyez depuis chez vous qu'il est temps de conclure. Ainsi je ne dois pas tout le temps intervenir, ce qui est un peu ennuyant. Voilà, je donne maintenant la parole à Alexandre Pojcek. Alexandre.
Yes, thank you very much, Rick. I would like first to express my sorry that we cannot meet in in physically in Crete. I know that Dora Bakoyannis, she made a lot of efforts, and it's really a pity that we cannot be together in Greece, much closer to the huge problems that Greece is overcoming. I have a different approach, different perspective than Frank Schwabe. I strongly believe that Greece can, from time to time, refuse the people that are sent by Turkey, and Turkey should make much more efforts to stop this illegal migration. Thank you very much.
I've got the impression that my waving works. Thank you for that, Alexander. Okay, we've got the third in the row, and then we go to the minister. Dame Cheryl, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, Minister. And can I echo Alexander's words? We are so sorry not to be meeting in Greece, and many congratulations on steering the Council of Ministers in such a hostile environment because of COVID. I have a couple of questions. I chair the political committee, and raised in committee the other day was the Novichok poisoning. Now French, Swedish and German labs have confirmed that Mr. Navalny was poisoned by Novichok. Several of the Council of Europe governments have called for an explanation from Russia. I'd like to know what the attitude of the Council of Ministers is on this, and what the Council of Ministers could do to ensure that justice is served, and what further action you would like to see from the Council of Europe. And secondly, in our committee, we raised the very worrying situation in Belarus. Even though they are not a member of the Council of Europe, our members are very, very concerned about what is happening on our doorstep, and have engaged through our committees with the leader of the opposition parties and the current government. It's been suggested that if the right protocols are put into place, then there could be a delegation to seek a peaceful outcome. I would like to know what the position is of the Council of Ministers, and indeed whether you, as the President, would be prepared to lead such a delegation if all the right protocols, as I said, were put in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for noticing that we put your clock on a little bit late. So that
you know me, I always try and stick to time.
That was good. That was good. Okay, let's go to the Minister. Mr. Minister, the Miltiadis, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you, Rick, and I would like to thank Pierre-Alain, Alexander, and Dame for their interventions. The first thing that I wanted to say to Pierre is that definitely relocation and help from other European countries is always welcome. And definitely the sanitary situation, especially after the burn-up of Morya, it's not at the highest level. It's, I would say, very limited, and we have, it's not only in 1 week that it has passed, it's less than 1 week that has passed since the burnout of Morya, and we try to build up secure and hygiene at the maximum. Especially, we are very concerned for the people being positive to the COVID-19, and we try to identify. Therefore, everyone who is getting in the new camp has to pass through the COVID test. And so far, 20 people have been identified as COVID positive, and they have been isolated, and they have been put in quarantine. But nevertheless, relocation should be one of the pillars of the next EU strategy on migration. But it shouldn't be the only pillar. There should be other pillars, and this comes to what Alexander said, that also a strong policy at the borders is required, and the cooperation of other partners like Turkey, according to the March 2016 agreement between declaration between EU and Turkey that urges Turkey to highly guard its border towards Greece, and and to show the highest possible cooperation with the Greek authorities in keeping people within Turkey. After all, it has been debated in the plenary, but also debated within the European framework, whether Turkey is a third safe country for people who are refugees from third countries into Turkey and who are trying to get into Europe. And yesterday, the Commissioner for Migration, Mrs. Johansson, has declared Turkey as a third safe country in the eyes of European Union. Well, the cases of Navalny and Belarus. Let me start by stating that I would like to wish a quick and full recovery of Mr. Navalny. And it's very important for everybody to get to the truth about what happened. The use of poisonous gas is deplorable and completely unacceptable. And it is essential that an independent judicial investigation should be carried out without delays. In the two cases that Mr. Navalny has brought to the European Court of Human Rights, the court strongly criticized his subjection to unlawful unrest, which it found pursued as the ulterior purpose, namely to suppress that political pluralism which forms part of an effective political democracy governed by the rule of law. The Committee of Ministers examined his cases at its latest human rights meeting in September, where it called on authorities to take action as a matter of urgency with a view to ensuring that the applicant is able, without hindrance, to exercise his rights to freedom of peacefully assembly, freedom of expression. And in the case of Belarus, as I mentioned already in my introductory remarks, we have published a joint statement of the trilogue, Rick, me, and the General Secretary, that called the Belarusian authorities and all relevant stakeholders to initiate broad-based and inclusive national dialogue, fully involving the civil society to ensure a peaceful way out of the current crisis and opening the door for necessary reforms benefiting the Belarusian citizens. Additionally, we have the Secretary General has issued a statement indicating her grave concern about human rights violations, and we have discussed in our trilogue meeting two things, which should be the most relevant participation on behalf of the Council of Europe, since Belarus has signed multiple treaties with us and is a candidate member for full participation, although this candidacy has been frozen over the years. We have decided that it's the most relevant organization to deal with the issue is the OSCE. And we are going to help the OSCE monitoring efforts to bring some concrete results and information about what is the situation. Definitely, we are in cooperation with the OSCE on the matter, and we will come back to you when we think that there is a need for an extra pressure put by the Council of Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We now go through the three next colleagues, which are Akif Kilic, then Ahmed Yildiz, and then Jacques Mer. Akif, you have the floor.
Well, good morning, to everybody. As I have a very limited time, I go straight to the question. Mr. Minister, you mentioned Hagia Sophia and that the Council of Europe has not in some way reacted to the reopening of the Hagia Sophia to prayers. However, to what should they react? The question is, the cultural heritage has been preserved for the last 500 years by Turkey and by Turks. So, and there's no cultural difference there. I mean, all the importance of the cultural history is preserved, and a lot of people, tourists and other people are also going into Hagia Sophia today as they were in the past. The only difference is there are also prayers at the same time because it was converted to a mosque in the past and it has been reopened. So there's no problem there. And mentioning Turkey regarding refugees, I think not doing her job is not correct because we have more than 4 million refugees in Turkey. And may I remind you, Europe is not taking as many refugees on this issue as Turkey. Thank you.
I just started to raise my arm, so that's going fine. We have now Ahmed Yildiz. Ahmed, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I am the new chairperson of the Turkish delegation and hope to meet you face to face soon. Mr. Chairman, on the Istanbul Convention, my country is implied here. I should inform that the debate about the issue is evolving in the right direction in Turkey. And at the beginning, the critics were vocal, but now it is a more balanced discussion. And personally, I am in favor of the convention strongly. Secondly, on the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus and Aegean, I am sorry that this debate continues, blames, condemnations, but the real way, the right way is to negotiate on this. Unfortunately, the Cyprus issue couldn't be solved due to Greek intransigence. May the Vice Minister admit that the recent tension in Eastern Mediterranean be triggered and started by the insistence of the Greek Cypriots to start searching and drilling unilaterally, although they were offered other options to postpone it until a solution is reached, or to do it jointly with the Turkish Cypriot side. But they insisted on the unilateral action. And unfortunately, the pushback is...
You've got 1 minute. You are over your 1 minute. So 10 seconds, please, because you're a new chair, a new vice chair. Okay.
And we will be happy if EU shares the burden of Greece and Turkey on the refugee issues, because it is really a humanitarian issue. But unfortunately, pushbacks are a reality.
Thank you. We go now to our third speaker of this list, which is Jacques Maire. Jacques, vous avez la parole. 1 minute, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Voilà, je voulais simplement, dans un premier temps, exprimer toute la solidarité avec la Grèce, Monsieur le Ministre, dans le contexte des difficultés auxquelles vous faites face et auxquelles nous faisons face concernant la Méditerranée orientale. Je voudrais apporter une suggestion sur le plan budgétaire. Vous savez que nous avons dû retarder les travaux importants de l'hémicycle, notamment dans le contexte de la remise en cause par la Turquie de sa contribution importante comme membre important. Or, aujourd'hui, on voit quand même l'extrême difficulté que nous avons à tenir nos réunions et le fait que notre dispositif électronique n'est pas digitalisé et nous permet à peine de pouvoir avoir des sessions dans un format efficace. Nous appelons nos voeux évidemment le plus rapidement possible des réunions sous forme physique, mais en attendant, je voudrais vraiment que le Conseil puisse s'engager fortement pour accélérer le déploiement de dispositifs numériques qui permettent des réunions mixtes. Voilà, et puis je soutiens tout à fait ce qu'a dit Mme Cheryl sur Navalny et la...
Très bien, 1 minute pile. Monsieur le Ministre, Mr. Minister, you have the floor.
Merci, cher Président. Let me say to all the three that have taken the floor and have tackled the issue of refugees, Akif, Ahmed, and Jacques, that definitely Greece and the European Union recognizes the fact that Turkey is hosting so many millions of refugees. And this is nonetheless one of the serious ties that connects the European Union and Turkey and binds the two parties into trying to find the most profitable way for both parties to work together. Nevertheless, it is definitely according to the obligations and the responsibilities of the Turkish authority not to let people coming from Turkey into European Union, and namely the Greek islands. And that's why it has been put in place this declaration between EU and Turkey of 2016, that Turkey, in several ways, have neglected for so far. I will not come back to the issue of what has happened last February and March on Evros region, where thousands of people were urged by the Turkish authority to cross the European border and to come into Greece by putting pressure in both Brussels and Athens. That it was responded by the Greek and European authorities, and it was definitely condemned, the utilization of these refugees as a tool of political pressure by all European partners. It is the fact that we have to find a common way on how to deal with this issue and to have to safeguard both human rights, but also the security sentiment of European citizens, that they don't want to see their countries being overflown by illegal migrants who call themselves asylum seekers, and their petition to be examined in such a long period of time that at the end of the day, these people remain in Europe forever. It is important to say one thing about Hagia Sophia. I said that I regret that the Council of Europe didn't take a stand. And I see that Hagia Sophia, regardless of being for 500 years as a Muslim mosque, or another 800 years as a Christian church, the last almost 100 years has become a museum. And it has become a museum as a sign of tolerance towards religious diversity and acceptance of the heritage of the one and the other. And the fact that we are going back to using it as and Turkey has decided to go back and use it as a mosque, doesn't bring the sign of high observation of the tolerance and multiculturalism as it has been perceived, and it has been the case for almost the last 100 years. So, according to what also the UNESCO has called, it's important to refrain from make use of these World Heritage Museums for religious acts. Finally, although the Council of Europe is not dealing with tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean and on other fora where we can discuss that, as we did with Mr. Çavuşoğlu last Thursday at the European Parliament, the Foreign Affairs Committee, where he and I had the opportunity to express our views in front of our of members of the European Parliament. I would like to say one thing about the tensions. The tensions between in the Eastern Mediterranean are not provoked by peaceful events, are provoked by the use of military force. And the presence of a great part of the Turkish naval fleet in the Eastern Mediterranean, escorting an exploratory vessel, it's definitely not a sign of promoting stability, security, and a peaceful way of negotiating and dealing with partners. We have urged to refrain from unilateral acts in areas that are contested and to go back to the table of dialogue. And this will remain Greece's position throughout this whole period, because we believe that with partners and neighbors, we have to discuss and not to go at arms. And we cannot definitely come back to the table of discussion by having a fully loaded gun on the table and the premise from the other side to be either you agree with me or we go into war. This is not kind of dialogue that we expect. We expect a dialogue that comes with a refrain from using belligerent tone and definitely from using military means as a mean to push for the outcome the other part wants. Therefore, we welcome all the initiatives from European Union, from member states like Germany, from the United States that urge for de-escalation and return on the table of discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We will now go to our last three colleagues who can take the floor, Reinhold Lopalka, Roger Gale, and last but certainly not least, Dora Bakoyannis. So we'll head off with Reinhold Lopalka. 1 minute, you have the floor. Reinhold, where are you? Okay, apparently we cannot get into connection with Reinhold Lopalka. So Roger Gale, Sir Roger, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, President. Good morning, Minister, and I share my colleagues' appreciation of the difficulties that you faced during the course of your presidency, and we all wish you well.
Put your device on floor, please. Left bottom. Okay.
It is on the floor.
Yeah, okay, super. You got the floor now.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, it was on the floor. I don't know how much of that you heard, Minister, but as I said, I share all our colleagues' appreciation of the difficulties that you faced during your presidency, and we hope that things will improve very shortly. I want to pick up, if I may, on the issue that Dame Cheryl raised earlier with you concerning the Russian Federation and illegal acts of poisoning, both in the United Kingdom and, as we now know, in connection with the case in Germany, which has been identified. It's long been a concern in the Parliamentary Assembly that the Council of Ministers is very reluctant to take remedial or sanction action against the Russian Federation. And I really do think that the time has come when the Council of Ministers must intervene and take serious action in connection with this. Otherwise, we have to ask what we're standing for. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Roger. Do we have Reinhold Lopalka? We'll try again. Reinhold? So apparently we cannot get in touch with Reinhold. So the last speaker is now Dora Bakoyannis. Dora, 1 minute. You got the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also thank the Minister for what he already said and come back to the to mentioning about Hagia Sophia. I would like to say, dear colleagues, Hagia Sophia, as the Minister already said, was for 800 years a church and 500 years a mosque. Late President Ataturk had decided to make it a museum because it's a world heritage where everybody could go in and see both the mosaics of the church, but also everything which as a mosque was done later on. That was the meaning. And because it belonged to everybody, you had the possibility to see all these wonderful art crafts. Unfortunately, today, half of these art crafts are covered and nobody can see it. Unfortunately, also, there was a second decision for the Carrier Museum, which was also a wonderful old church with wonderful mosaics and paintings, which if they are covered, nobody can see anymore. It's a pity. It's a pity because it sends the wrong messages. Istanbul is full of mosques, and I strongly believe that the message of tolerance and respect to this world heritage would be good for Turkey also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dora. We gave you a little bit in the beginning and a little bit at the end, but after all, you are the chair of the Greek delegation. Miltiadis, Mr. Minister, you got the floor.
Well, I thank Dora for her comments. Actually, we are in line. She enlightened you much more about what's happening in the museums turned into mosques, and this is definitely something that should be taken into account. But let me come to the comment made by Roger about the Russian Federation. And I know the persistence with it, Roger has been dealing in his views. But coming here as a chairman of the Committee of Ministers, I would like to say that each Council of Europe member state has rights and obligations. And all states are expected to meet their commitments under the European Convention on Human Rights and the other Council of Europe Convention to which they have acceded. The situation of human rights and democracy in Russia is regularly discussed in the Committee of Ministers. The Council of Europe remains committed to discussing core issues with the authorities of the Russian Federation in a constructive manner and to provide its expertise in the course of reforms. And regarding the execution of the European Court's decisions, the Venice Commission just recalled that under Article 46 of the European Convention, every state has the obligation to implement the final judgments of the courts rendered against it. In its recent opinion, the Venice Commission made concrete proposals to overcome the difficulties posed by the new amendments to the Constitution, and I trust that the Russian authorities will make the best possible use of these proposals in line with their international commitments. Definitely, this issue is going to be reviewed and discussed again in the Committee of Ministers and under the principles that I have already stated. Dear Rick, I think that we conclude here, and I would like to thank you all, and thank you also personally, you, for being all extremely active in representing the Parliamentary Assembly throughout this period, and I want to highlight also your permanent position in Strasbourg and availability to every call in order to meet in urgency. I think that it's important that the Council of Europe doesn't lose its relativity to the ongoing issues of concerns and remains a very active pillar of our European legal system and of our European values of democracy, rule of law, and the human rights. And therefore, to have vibrant discussions in the Parliamentary Assembly has been always the power and the force of this organization. And I thank you for giving me the time to participate in your today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister Miltiadis. Of course, as a former member of PACE, you understand the sensitivities of members of parliament, and it's very good to hear that, because we can say this through this channel. There's a lot of ministers who don't have that. So thank you for that. And hopefully we can meet each other in person in the near future, be it in Strasbourg, in Athens, or wherever. But thanks again for being on board and having all the questions being answered.
Let me say something that since the October session is not going to be on, and it was already organized, and that our Prime Minister would be there in order to present our views. I think that nevertheless, we will try to have an opportunity to come with our Prime Minister in Strasbourg, pay a visit to the Council of Europe in order to send the message that Greece is committed to this organization and to the ongoing processes within the framework of this organization. We haven't concluded the time in order to inform you about when this will happen, but definitely within the next 2 months, we are going to pay a visit in Strasbourg.
Thank you for that, Miltiadis. In any case, we've got your Prime Minister on our agenda on October 13th, so it's just a proposal. So maybe we can have it work. Thank you very much again, and hope to see you soon, be it here in Athens, in Greece, wherever. But I'm sure that we will meet soon. Thank you very much. This being said, dear colleagues, let's now go to our next point, which is the examination of new credentials. We've received some credentials for new members. Are there any objections to these credentials being ratified? If there is an objection, please take